All right. I was just going to say we're going to get the show on the road. Um, Hi, and welcome to tonight's Sliven General Meeting. We are hybrid in person at Mountain Community Resources in Felton, and you can see the room. We've got a few participants in person, and then we've got a lot of folks who are online. Thanks for joining us. So tonight we're going to talk about emergency communication. And what we mean about that is when there is, one of our classic winter storms or other disasters, how actually does emergency communication happen in San Lorenzo Valley? So that's really important. Tonight, this meeting is going to highlight the alerts that the county can send out and the notifications. We're going to look at CruiseAware, Safer, the website called Safer. We're going to look at NOAA weather alert radios and tell you about a really important upcoming test that the county is going to run, and you want to be a part of it. We will overview emergency communications in San Lorenzo Valley. There's been a long-standing concept that we're going to have explained tonight so that everyone can understand who's involved and how messages flow. We are going to also have a guest from the Bonnie Doon neighborhoods explain how they have implemented MERS radio communication in their neighborhoods. And we see currently that there's a lot of interest in Firewise communities, or maybe in your own neighborhoods, to do something similar. So we think that there's some good information that we can learn from, and looking forward to that. We will also talk about ham radio. What's all about ham radio and what is that communication like? What is it that ham radio operators, particularly members of ARES, Amateur Radio Emergency Services, can do in this communication flow, particularly linking us to the County Office of Response, Recovery, and Resilience. And that will be our meeting this evening. We've got a lot to cover. We're going to go through it at a pretty good pace so that everyone has a chance to really understand well. And I also wanted to say that initially, we wanted to also look into the topic of broadband communication because we got word that there are some initiatives happening from the federal level. There's funding and there's initiatives in the county driving the various participants in the backbone of the internet and the technologies around that. And it's moving forward and it's really exciting. Now, it's so exciting that we have decided to push all of that content to this time next Tuesday. And that's going to be our Communications 2 general meeting. So I do hope that you come back and join us for that meeting because it's going to be really exciting to see what is in store for us potentially in the future for communications. So with that, I'm going to jump onto my Zoom station, and then we'll start from there. All right. Don't we love the magic of computing? All right, so we're going to start tonight with first I'm going to do some introductions of our guest speakers. With us include David Reed from the Santa Cruz County Office of Response, Recovery, and Resilience. Thanks being here with us, Dave. I always love hearing about what your ideas are about making our county responsiveness so much better. And I'm pleased every time I speak with you, I learn something more and new, and I hope you all do too. Also with us is Bob Fike, who is a ham radio enthusiast, a member of ARES, and a previous assistant emergency coordinator for the county for ham radio. Also with us is Lisa Shalop, who is a member of ARES, and she lives in Bonnie Doon. She's going to share with us lessons learned from Bonnie Doon with MERS Radio. And then we also have John Gerhardt with us. He's a ham radio enthusiast. He is currently the district emergency coordinator. This is for the Amateur Radio Relay League, serving Santa Cruz County. So he knows a lot about how communication with the county is accomplished. And we're really glad that John could join us tonight to share his expertise. Okay. So with that, let's just start. I'm going to start a conversation with Dave Reed. Dave, so when we're talking about what's our goal overall, when we're talking about emergency communication, we've got landlines, cell phones, and we don't have the greatest coverage everywhere. We all know this. These are some challenges. Can you speak to what your hope or your goal is with respect to what we hope effective communication is within our community?
Sure. And I want to acknowledge that this audience, all of you here, are a different level of engaged subset of the community. So some of this stuff may be intuitive to some of you, but I want to speak at the kind of whole community level. And so our biggest and kind of most primary goal is to communicate early and often when we know information and are able to do so, right? The last thing we want to do in the emergency management space is to be caught off guard, though the nature of disaster and Mother Nature sometimes will lead to that. But using our most recent extreme heat event, we want to try and communicate the goings on or the event ahead of potential power outages, ahead of the event, so folks can make preparations as needed, so that they're aware. Obviously, this group, I think, tracks all that stuff at a higher level than maybe some other folks. Some other folks might be, more interested in what's going on reality TV versus the reality outside. Or they just have life, right? Kids and everything else. And it's like, I don't know what the weather's going to be like next week, let alone tomorrow. So we want to be able to communicate early and bring people's awareness, raise their attention to something that we are watching or tracking. Another goal is obviously using as many of the different channels as we can. So the most common ones are going to be, Cruise Aware. The early communications with most of you will be via email. We want to save texts and certainly voice we want to save voice for like the most emergent scenarios. We will send emails early. We may send texts as an elevation, and then if we need to get to a voice message with everybody, that means it's probably pretty urgent. And we want people to be aware. But social media, for all of its failings, is also a big resource of communication. both for ourselves and our partners. The example I'll give right now is that the last couple small, what I would call uneventful fires in our community this last week, the CAL FIRE CZU webpage posted that stuff early and quickly. And so, our partner, and then we try to amplify that information so that it's on our page as well, but there's sometimes a lag. So sometimes it's following CAL FIRE in the fire season, in particular, because they're going to be the first ones on scene. They're going to be the first ones aware of it. And then there's the radios, the televisions, the landlines, if we're making those phone calls. So using all of those tools. Those are kind of my key, the key tenets that we want to try and achieve in communication, ahead of an emergency. And then obviously, as you get closer to something, or we know what the scale and magnitude is, we want to get more focused, targeted, and clear, right? We want to give you clear direction. If you're in an evacuation warning zone or order zone, or we're going to be, preparing to do mass evacuations for a wildfire, we'll start to get a little bit more targeted with our messaging geographically as needed. I'll stop there as a starting point to the conversation, but happy to answer questions or follow up as well too.
Yeah, and I wanted to mention that for those of you who are in Zoom, you're invited to use the chat if you've got a question that comes up. Someone in the audience in person, if you've got a question, you can raise your hand, and we can do our best to take questions from you all. So what I want to do now is step into some of these notifications, and let's make sure we all understand how they work. The first one that I'm going to talk to is CruiseAware. So I am going to share my screen. And where I'm starting from actually is the county website. So Santa Cruz County ca.gov/OR3 response. And here we are on the plan and prepare page. And I mentioned this because we're going to come back to this a couple times. So it's important for you guys to know where to go. Where's the first page I want to hit to get where I need to go. So when I scroll down a little bit and I look under the alert and monitoring tools, I see that there's a link to CruiseAware registration. We're going to look at that. Okay, so alert notification applications, CruiseAware. So there's some good description about what the CruiseAware site is. It is what we know as the reverse 911 system, also previously known as Code Red. And so what we want to know about CruiseAware is that there are alerts that you can receive on your phone by a phone call. You can receive an email. You can receive a text. You get to have some configurability about what kinds of topics you want to be notified of, and also of these different mediums. There's multilingual support, which is really important to be able to have equity access through everyone in our community as well. So I will point out that in this page is a frequently asked questions link. And so I won't go through all of this, but I do want you to know that it is there, and it describes how to register and some issues, like if you get some kinds of notifications that are complicating your registration, you want to check this out. For example, maybe you need to go through like a password reset. It's also good if you've set up CruiseAware some time ago and you haven't logged in a while, to go ahead and check it out again and make sure that you can still log in and that it's still configured in the way that you like it. So we're gonna actually use the page here. Okay, so here it is. This is the registration portal. And I'm going to actually log in and show you what it looks like when I do that. Now here, what's interesting is it tells you right up front, let me make this a little bit bigger, what number phone alerts show up as, what email address you will get sent emails from, which number for text messages you can receive from. And so it'd be really smart if you put this in a contact entry, for example, in your mobile phone, so that you know that when these messages come through, your phone will recognize who's the sender. Okay, so I'm going to log in. I'm just going to show you how that's done. Oh, I did it wrong again. One. Okay, so here we are. Here's my account. And so you can verify your name, make sure that you're using an email account that you like, and your phone number. Notice this red checkbox, receive text messages on your phone. What we're going to do is we're going to, there's some fields down here. I think I'm going to just disregard those. And it looks like I've accidentally typed something in there, but that doesn't need to. Okay, so we're going to use the left side here, which is the menu system, to look at all the functions that are in this registration portal. So you have the option to add additional email accounts to also receive notifications. Maybe it's your spouse or someone else in your family or a neighbor who doesn't have the same, who doesn't want to configure their things, but they can receive and push through you. You can configure additional phone calls. And then here's where you configure your location. So this is like a geolocation of where you are given where your address is. Let me ask you a question, actually, Dave. Tell me about why is this so important?
Yeah, so it's so important to list both your home and other addresses, because when we do location-based notifications for incidents within a specific zone or area, having your location information of your primary residence, your work, your loved ones, children or grandchildren's daycare or school. That way you're getting the information that is location specific. And as Tammy articulated, this is also for the reverse 911 system. So there are incidents where our law enforcement partners throughout the county and the cities, there's a shelter in place for law enforcement activity, or there's a missing person, or there's a puma walking through a neighborhood, stay inside. Those notifications will only come to you if your place-based information is in here as well. So that, Netcom uses this as well. Does that help it, Tammy?
Yeah, okay. So if those are great reasons to have other locations identified on this, because my place of work, where my relative's house, where I'm spending a lot of time. Yeah, fantastic.
I mean, the other way to look at it too is your elderly parent, grandparent, somebody who has, access and functional needs that in your family. It may be helpful for you to be aware and be on, have that location on your list so that, you can help them if they need it, as a family member or a friend or a caretaker.
Oh, I see, because I'm going to get a notification that could be about their location,
Yep.
which would be important for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I always say, put your home, your address, your loved one's critical location. So your loved ones could be a child's school location, or a loved one's alternate home location. And that way you'll get that information.
Great. Tell me more about alternative contacts.
So you can put other folks' contact information in here, and they will get the same place-based messages that are in your account. As an example, early on, I put my wife in here as an alternative contact, but then based on my settings and my role, I get all the messages, and I was like, wait a minute, she doesn't need to get all the messages. So I took her out, but you can put other folks in your, in your inner circle of folks in here, and they would get the same place-based messages that you're getting. So
Okay,
it's
great. Yeah. So it could be that we can use this feature, or like you said, like it could be that a family member might migrate to have their own Cruiseware login so
Yes.
that they can tailor all of these settings for themselves.
Yep.
Great. Okay, let's look at notifications. Now, admittedly, folks, this is just my choices, but hey, we all get to make choices, and Dave can critique me about what I've chosen. So I said I want to be notified for general notifications, emergency. I've got Santa Cruz County roads and infrastructure. And I'm thinking, well, actually, maybe can you tell me a little bit, Dave, about these choices? Like what do I expect in a general notification, perhaps?
So right now, the way we're using general messaging and general messages is, that information only, weather's going to be really, really hot, or we're expecting, inclement issues. So we're using that for everybody, getting that kind of thing. Emergency is, there might be an action required as part of the emergency message, and generally we'll put it under an emergency notification if we're sending it to you via voice and text and email.
Okay.
Obviously, yeah, the Santa Cruz County roads and infrastructure, what we want to try and do is push people, like, this is somewhat more relevant in our urban environment where there's utilities, but like if you want to understand if there's like a sewer project that's going to be impacting your road, then our public works department will use Cruiseware and message people along the construction impacted area through this. If you have Santa Cruz County roads and infrastructure checked, and to give you an update on that project. So that's that one. And I'm happy to, I'll just walk through the rest. Santa Cruz County Park is pretty straightforward. If there's a parks related event like Parks and Recs, which is the like swim in Simpkins pool with your dog event, or other types of things, you can get information that way. Voter information is pretty straightforward, like, polls are opening or voter related information. Public health is if there's a public health emergency or any public health related concerns. Community events is kind of broad and all encompassing in terms of what, if there's a special community event like we had this past Saturday up in Boulder Creek, we could have used the community events page as an option. Not a lot of people have checked that box yet. And the newest one is prescribed burn. And so we're working with our state parks and CAL FIRE partners to build our communication system. We're not in prescribed burn season right now, so they're not doing any of those. But as we get closer to fall and the winter shoulder season, and those become a thing again, we are going to start to message people on prescribed burns, but we're only going to message people if you've checked that box. CAL FIRE and state parks, we don't want to spam you, or spam folks who don't want to know about prescribed burns. They were really kind of felt like we need to have an opt-in option for prescribed burn information sharing. So our goal is state parks on a weekly basis, or other partners. CAL FIRE will say there's a prescribed burn scheduled for, Henry Cowell on these 3 days. And then we would send out a cruise aware message via email only, probably. That says, hey, there's a prescribed burn. So if you see smoke, that's where it's coming from. And then, these are the resources that you can look at to find more information. The parks website or the MBARD Monterey Bay Area Resources Control District website or others.
That's great. I'm really excited about this. As you probably know, and a lot of us know, that in some of the recent prescribed burns, I see notifications going out on social media. Not everyone does, right? So, the first experience for someone might be they step outside their door and they smell smoke and they're really wondering what's going on. So I'm pretty excited about this being added so that we can have yet another way to find out, hey, oh, this is what's going on. Oh, honey, don't worry. You might smell some smoke. There is a prescribed burn today. I can tell my husband that. He appreciates it. So this is all exciting. And want to know if one of you make a change to your things, you want to make sure that you do update so that it saves them. Now, there's the notification part. Now, right now, I've just got it as the text messages. And I think I do want to enable email because I'm very interested in getting those prescribed burn notifications. Tell me, what does it mean to reorder these choices?
It's if obviously if we're just sending it out via email, it's just going to go to email. If we are sending multiple channels, is what we call them, kind of voice, text, email, it is going to try and sequentially do that for you in the back end of the software. So I would recommend the order that you have there. If you had voice checked, then obviously, you might have that higher up, or right below text, but it's just a way to organize the priority messaging.
So if the system successfully sends me a text, will it still also send me a voice? It will.
Yeah.
Okay.
When you have this, yeah, when you have them
Like when I have both of them checked like this. Okay. I'm going to ask a little bit of a tricky question, which is, gosh, it's probably been been a couple of years, and it could have been the Code Red system or the early Cruiseware, where some of the notifications are like these federal notifications, and they seem to be coming in just after midnight or 1 a.m., local time, which is super frustrating. Can you tell us what to expect in that regard?
So that's actually, if you scroll down
Mm-hmm.
here in this page, we get to what you're referring to are the NOAA the weather system notifications. So that's what this part of the notification information is. And so these early days of our implementation, yes, it was see, June, July, August last year, time flies. When we rolled this out, we had a lot more weather related options for folks. Extreme fog, extreme heat, all kinds of things. Marine wind conditions. There's a whole litany of things. And what we realized is the way the system works, and they've fine-tuned this to improve it a little bit, but the way the system works is anytime the National Weather Service issues any of these, it triggers something in the system, and the system automatically sends out a notification. So I'm not pushing a button. Nobody at Netcom is pushing a button. It's automatic program script that sends this when the National Weather Service says there's a severe thunderstorm warning or a fire weather watch or what have you. We've tried to get them, and they've fine-tuned it a little bit so that it avoids that kind of midnight type of a thing, or sending it multiple times. It was sending it multiple times, like every time the National Weather Service needs to update it, because their advisories expire after a certain period of time, and then they refresh it, and then it sends it again. So we've done a couple things. We've significantly shrunk the National Weather Service messages you can receive to the ones we feel like are most life safety focused. If any of these conditions or things are happening in our community, that's, that may impact life safety, right? If it's a fire red flag warning, we probably have a PSPS environment, so you don't have any power, so communication is going to be hampered. Thunderstorms, we've all lived through CZU, so we know what that means. And then obviously if there's a tsunami. So we narrowed it down, and then we've tried to work with the consultant or the technology solution team to eliminate some of those duplicate messaging and waking up at all random hours with this stuff. Generally our rule of thumb is we want to wake you up. Like if I need to wake you up, I want to wake you up. I don't want the National Weather Service to wake you up, because in theory, an automated message from the National Weather Service shouldn't wake you up. I should wake you up. So I apologize if I have to wake you up, but if I do so, it's because it's an emergency.
Okay, I appreciate that. Yeah, and I was also wondering about like what's the difference between warning and watch, and how do I know what I want to pay attention to?
Yeah, so it's always, it's always a reminder to folks. Some people it's intuitive, some people it's you forget, but watch. So it goes in order of intensity. It goes watch, advisory, warning in the National Weather Service nomenclature.
Okay,
So
let's see,
watch may happen, but it's uncertain, so they're not sure. So we're kind of yeah, there you go. That was the page.
yeah, pulling up the National Weather Service page here.
Yep. And then
So
advisory, it's a little bit more certain, but we don't know how bad. And then warning is like, okay, it's definitely going to happen, and it's definitely going to be bad. Type of
okay. Great. So those are that's what we mean here. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I was looking at tsunami, and I was saying like, well, I live in the mountains. Why do I want to hear about tsunami? Can you explain that to me?
I mean, we living in a coastal county, even though you may live in the mountains, and many of you obviously in the San Lorenzo Valley Emergency Network and Bonnie Doon folks, you live on high ground. You may have family or others, or you may be heading down into town, shall we say, into the coastal zone. And the last thing you want to do is start your way out of the valley and then be like, what is going on? Like, why is everything, you just want to be aware, like, because what we're going to do in a tsunami scenario, the state may issue what's called a wireless emergency alert, the WEA, so that hits every cell tower everywhere. So you'd probably hear it if it was a significant tsunami through them, even before you'd hear it from us, or from this system. But for smaller ones or less impactful ones, we want to let you know, just to avoid the coast, right? We don't want looky-loo scenarios. So it's just good. It's another one of those advanced warning ones. You might be going, you might be down on a walk on the beach that afternoon or that evening. You might be down there. And so by checking these, you'd at least get that on your cell phone.
Right. Great. Thank you. Okay, well, I'm clicked update, so I'm good with that. Let's show you a few more things. There is an unsubscribe function here. Also a link to the FAQ, link to change your password. So that pretty much covers the Cruise Aware. So thanks very much for that. I'm going to log out. Let's see, I'm gonna stop this share Now it looks like we've got a question that's on the chat, and that is actually about emergency sirens. So sirens are a big thing in SLV. I use firedispatch.com. Why isn't there more fire stuff on notifications?
So in that notifications tab, those the fire related weather notifications that we were just talking about, those are all of the major National Weather Service related fire things. So again, that part of the notification area is the National Weather Service designates a geographic area to be under one of those conditions. So other fire stuff, Bill, that you're referring to, I would assume may fall outside of the National Weather Service's purview, but do you want to elaborate on what you're describing?
Yes, please. Basically, living in the forest, some of us are very concerned about the rapid spread of wildfires. And so Fire Dispatch, like I was mentioning, is one of my key apps or web pages. I would use CruiseAware a lot more, even as an app, if I could refer to any kind of local fire situation, because when my ears are burning like that, I want to make sure that my family's ready in case something big is about to happen.
Yeah, so what you're kind of describing is almost like a scanner type scenario. So we, again, our law enforcement and our fire professionals are very sensitive about over messaging using CruiseAware. So Fire Dispatch as a tool is kind of a website that is tracking all of the NetCom related dispatch information related to fire. The best example I can give you is last week we had 2 fires, one in the San Lorenzo Valley around Brookdale that was contained in less than a half an acre, and another one down in Buzzard Lagoon area outside of Aptos that was about of a quarter of an acre. For CAL FIRE's perspective, when they have the capacity and the conditions are appropriate, they don't even notify me that they're being dispatched to those things, right? So they notify me if it's going to be an extended attack, or if the conditions, as you said, Bill, are ripe for rapid spread, right? So I think it's just a balance, right? For what I would recommend for you, Bill, as you're already doing and others, right? If you want that level of granularity, then what you're doing is great. But we're not going to use CruiseAware for that, because that's too, there could be 4 quarter-acre fires, or more a week or a day in certain times of the year. And so we don't want to inundate people with messaging through CruiseAware. We want to use that a little bit more strategically, unless NetCom is notifying you in the immediate area around that quarter-acre fire so that you're aware of it, because it's literally right on top of you.
But literally, that was the question, was because of your location capacity in CruiseAware, and the fact that on Fire Dispatch, I have to read carefully through all the different events. It would be very nice. I guess PulsePoint is another example of an app that shows local fire responses. So that's why I would advocate for this level of information.
Yeah, and all I can tell you is that our fire professionals and law professionals will not go to that level of communication with CruiseAware to everybody. Now, if that quarter-acre fire is right next to your home, NetCom may send out a bubble around that incident to say, fire in your neighborhood, but we're not going to use it in that way. I just need to be candid with you, because the fire professionals are very, very sensitive to people unsubscribing because they're getting too much messaging. So.
Okay.
Thanks for your question, Bill, and your answer, Dave. Really appreciate that. All right, I'm pushing a few links into the chat.
Yeah, we have a question in the room here.
Great, yeah.
Hi, my name is Allison. My question is, what is the delay time between agencies submitting their messaging to CruiseAware and CruiseAware getting to me?
So it depends. So when you say agencies, is there an example that you want to provide, or is there
Sure.
Yeah.
You did have a number of different kinds of notifications, both from at the county level, and then there were some like participating state agencies as well, state parks you mentioned. Also, I think that was the only in CAL FIRE. That sounded like those are the only state agencies we were hearing from, and the rest is county. And so I'm wondering, in either a situation where there's a public health issue and you're getting a message from the county out, or if you're getting a message about prescribed fire, like what does it take for an agency to get, I'm assuming you, OR3, the information, and then you send out the CruiseAware message. So there's like a delay there, and I don't know. Or are they do they have the power to just blast it whenever they want?
Yeah, good question. So we're building, so you're really focusing the state parks CAL FIRE prescribed burn piece. We're building that system, right? So we're building that plan right now. Preliminarily, what we're thinking is that once a week, we would send out a prescribed burn notification update, because but we're fine tuning that, because one of the realities that we know, and this may be, obvious to all of you, right, is that they need a permit for that prescribed burn. They being state parks or CAL FIRE or others, they may need that from the air board. And they really, they'll get a permit to burn on 4, 5, 6, 7 consecutive days, and the conditions may not align for them to do it safely. So we may get to a place where we're able to say, okay, on Mondays, we send out a notification, they're going to burn on these days. And then the day they actually start burning, we send out another notice, but we haven't fine-tuned that. So the delay, so we're going to build a system to be forward-looking as much as we can, in terms of, you could expect to see prescribed burns in these locations on these days. But we may also get tailored to be like, okay, the prescribed burn is happening today. So I can't, we're building that system still. The other ones are more kind of less emergent, other than the general and emergency stuff. So like road closure stuff, or road construction stuff will happen on a project by project specific basis. So, and our public works department has the ability to send out the notifications themselves. So I don't control, I'm not the gatekeeper on that kind of messaging. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Do you think you'll get Caltrans involved at all? Because the highways, like Highway 1, there's always stuff going on there. When Highway 9 was closed, that was a really big problem for a lot of people. I don't know.
Yeah, we probably won't get Caltrans integrated into CruiseAware, but certainly using, Cruise 511, or even we do have it on Safer. And I know Tammy, I'm trying to be sensitive to time. When we get to the Safer application, you can see that we do have some of that traffic information as well. But Caltrans is a giant state agency beast, and they're not going to play in a little sandbox very well.
All right. Looks like we've got one more question in the room. Let's take that real quick.
Yeah, I'd like to elaborate on this question. Many of us live in canyons where we've lost all cell phone signal and all internet because of us having to pay to dig under roads, or under, having to pay $10,000 or $100,000 to get the cable up. So when we get first of all, we don't get the messages. So I found the thing that is terribly helpful is the Pulse app, which is all the calls to the fire department and the down poles and all that. And so when you do get a message, you can at least see where it happened, what the status is, if the road's clear, if you should take a different road and get back up the mountain. So-
Fantastic. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
yeah, so the Pulse
Absolutely.
app, and the other thing that's also very helpful, if you have like access to Facebook, which I rarely do, but if you do, there is the fire department has the various volunteer fire departments have their own pages, and it tells you exactly what is going on and how long it's going to take to clear the road and what the status is and what other roads you should take instead.
Excellent.
And I do hope we will talk a little bit about what to do for those, tens of thousands of people in the San Lorenzo that cannot get notifications.
Right. And you may want to come back next Tuesday when we're going to dive into our broadband communication topic, because we're really interested in what is the technologies that can help move us all forward so that we get better communications. Thanks for your question.
Yeah,
I'm
but
gonna-
remember, 5G isn't really broadcast cell phone signal. It only goes, it's like Wi-Fi. It only goes 1,000 feet if there's no obstructions.
Cool.
And-
Hold
and-
this
and-
for next week. I'm going to move on. And what we're going to do now is I'm going to do a quick demo of the Safer website. Don't know whether how many of you folks have seen that. Again, I'm starting from the Santa Cruz County OR3 response page, and then there's this button, Safer Situational Awareness app. So there's a lot in here. I'm going to just try to show you a few things. I've been really impressed by this. Dave, it looks like the county has put together this incredible system that's pulling data from so many sources. How long has this been up?
We've kind of over the last year, 18 months, tried to push it out to the public. It's definitely been it's a living thing. We continue to add functionality. Our GIS team, I am biased, I think they are phenomenal. Have put this together and continue to refine it, and we've added functionality. So it's lived in different forms for a few years, and we really tried to push it out to the public over the last 12 to 18 months.
I'm just going to talk to this screen first and note that at the top are some top level menu items. This single or dual map view, I'll show that to you briefly. And then there's this great links and social media here. But what we're looking at in this main body right now, I'm on a single map view, and I can see which map view I'm looking at on the left. It's opening up with Fire Map. Now on the right side, I can see my summary of like my evacuation orders, warnings, who's affected. And you can see in this middle zone that this map is showing us Santa Cruz County. I can zoom in quite far actually. And these outlines are our zones, evacuation zones. And we can just mouse around and go up valley and see this fantastic high resolution map. Here, there are these choices of subjects that can be visible or hidden. Like right now, the zones are visible. Santa Cruz County zones group. I can click and make that disappear from the map, so it's not part of what I'm looking at. I have a city limits. I can click that and not look at it. There's some interesting things that I encourage you to look at what's in here. We can see if there are any wildfire perimeters or current incidents. So I'm just unchecking those. But here you can see, which one is this? This is a particular fire. I can scroll in on that. Oh, too far. We can see these perimeters and get some information just by clicking on it. There's a fantastic amount of data that's in here that we get to navigate through.
So,
It-
Tammy, will you turn back on the layers for a second? I wanted to just show some folks, that are watching a sense of, so what I just did, if you turn on the Zonehaven zone layers,
Yes.
yeah, that one. So now zoom into the area. And so what I just did is I changed the zone. So zoom in on Loch Lomond. I just changed that zone. It's in training. It's in a training mode, right? So I didn't want to alert or make anybody nervous, but this is what will happen, right? So like I wanted to give people the real world context. So
Mhm.
when we change a zone into an evacuation warning or order, it will highlight in real time. I just did it. It did it in seconds, and it will display on here. So if you want a bird's eye view of what evacuation, what zones are in warning and order, that's why we have the Zonehaven zones highlighted here. And so I just wanted to put one zone in training, and so people could see what it will look like.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Mhm.
So I know that there's some additional maps here. We're not going to necessarily go through all of these. This is interesting. Fire predictive points. I'm assuming it just is calling out that there is fire danger in our area and that there's some science and math that's going behind the colors and polygons here.
Yep. And that's a new layer that we added within the last couple weeks. And what if you put this on your bookmarks and you take a look at it periodically, these polygons and these colors change.
Mm.
This is like real time fire danger conditions. So when we were in that kind of July 4th week, a lot of the county was in the oranges and reds. Right now it's a little bit cooler. There's less wind, so you can see the risk is down a little bit more. If we get into a big marine layer environment, it probably will get back into the greens. So.
Okay. Let's see. I'm going to jump to something that I saw recently that I was pretty excited about. Alert cameras. So what I see is that this is some camera. Obviously, this one tells me it's a camera on top of the Dream Inn. And it's pretty interesting. Let's see.
Yeah,
This part of the map in the upper right, this is that camera. And I believe that with my mouse, if I just scroll around here by my mouse, you can see it's tracking me. So I'm getting a sense from an overview where I'm looking. Or here, I can see where I'm looking. Now I guess this has this particular shading because we're more interested in looking at, is there fire from this camera's angle than maybe this angle? And I can click on another one. So this is Scotts Valley. And so we've got our sunset happening here within this field of view. And then the back side of the camera is this, which some of it's pretty close. And then there's obviously the hardware of the camera also. And I guess I can.
It does a 360 degree, in some of these camera locations, it'll be a 360 degree composite down below at a certain interval.
Okay.
So you can see that 360 degree deposit, that landscape scale, or the panoramic has a specific timestamp, and then the shaded view that you see is where the camera is currently pointed.
Yeah.
And so, and just as a frame of reference, these cameras using some artificial intelligence actually picked up the fires from last week pretty early.
Yeah, I wanted to mention that because when I heard of that fire, I knew I was late by a couple of hours, but I thought, oh, I want to jump on here and see what the cameras see, right? And of course, at that time, I think this fire was somewhere in this vicinity, and but there was nothing to be seen. And then I noticed that there was this playback, and I basically went to like the 3-hour playback of that particular day, and I could actually see the little smoke that came up and then was extinguished. So I didn't know that even had this playback mechanism, which is really cool. And I want to say that I love looking at this site when there is something of interest going on, because that's when you see the actual data doing something and showing us something of interest. I'm going to flip into map use dual mode. And what that means is that on the far right side, on the far left side, I get these little red pullouts, which is the menu. So I can actually look at two different things that are complementary or different depending on whatever I want to look at. So maybe I want to look at road closures. Too far zoomed in. Let's see over here what I want to work at. I don't know. Maybe I want to look at the wind. What's the current wind here? This Ventusky Maps, which actually has quite a lot of information, and it can give us a good sense of what's going on with weather. Purple air is air quality. Some people really like to look at that and see what the air quality is like in their location. One of the things that I did during the winter storms this last winter was I kept an eye on the flood map, particularly the San Lorenzo River. And I noticed that there are certain points where we can measure the depth of the water. So San Lorenzo had big trees. Oh, and here's a graph. If I click on that graph, it pops it open and I can see what the current is or what was happening at that time where there was actually a potential evacuation down in the Felton Grove area. In Felton, there was actually a graph that showed, hey, this is the prediction of the height of the river. And then over time, I could see, oh, well, actually, the river's not rising as high as the prediction. This must be why my friends who live in that area are not like freaking out. Like they know that that they are prepared to evacuate, but maybe the risk is going down. Or maybe conversely, the risk is going up, but this is a super interesting resource to be looking at in real time to get information of relevance. I'm just going to stop there unless there's something you want me to jump in and show, Dave. I wanted to show also that there is the links where you've got not a huge number of links, but I think I would say a good number of links to quality sites to give us more information. And I really appreciate that. And then there's the social media link, which is if you feel like you missed an announcement by one of the agencies, maybe you'll find it here. I mean, I think I feel I don't, like, for example, don't do Twitter, but I do follow, Facebook and social media, and we often will see other posts there. But this is here too. I just think it's really neat.
So the only other page that you haven't clicked on, and for the San Lorenzo, since this is the Slevin meeting, the summary page, that middle has really cool information. I'm a dork, data dork, so full transparency. So it repeats the evacuation information, right? If we have any, zones in evacuation warning and order, power outage stuff. So that's, and you can see that spatially on the maps too. That's like PG&E stuff. But if you keep scrolling down, this is the one that we created after the floods, of course. But I used it a lot this winter. And so this river stream information has a lot of information. So to step through it, it's got river gauges at different creeks and rivers and streams throughout the county. It shows you what the current river stage is, 3.5, 2.3, that's the current stage. You can actually click, if you have this page open and just like in your browser on your machine, your home machine, if you click on the arrows, so this is the gauge. If you click, Tammy, to the one of the right arrow or that arrow,
okay,
and it'll show you the river stage graph, you know, so
Right.
that's from NOAA. And then if you click again, this is actually the rate of change. So we built our GIS team. I wouldn't take credit. Our GIS team built an algorithm that goes in and grabs the data from the stream gauge. And basically, if you keep the website open, it will track how fast the stream is rising. And so for us in OR3, it's not only what is the river stage during a flooding, you know, or heavy rain event, but how fast is it rising? And as many of you may be tracking or aware, Liz, I'm thinking of you and, you know, and where you live, there in the audience, you know, when the river is rising at half a foot every 15 minutes, and we know we have 2, 3, 4, 5 more hours of rain, that's concerning, right? Like if it's anywhere remotely close to a flood stage, and we're seeing a rate of change of half a foot or a quarter of a foot every 15 minutes, so a foot an hour, we know it's going to rise. It's rising very, very fast. And so we're going to take action at that point. So we really do track not only the absolute river stage, but what is the forecast looking like from that point forward into time, but also how fast is the river rising. And earlier in the rainy season, right, earlier in the winter, it'll rise slower for the same amount of rain. And then as we all have lived, it'll get, you know, the watershed will get saturated, and those rain events will cause the river to rise rapidly. And so we're really tracking those things, but we wanted to provide that same information to all of you.
I do have a question.
Sure.
I've noticed in the past that the NOAA website seemed to update slower than some of the other data sources. I was wondering if there's you know, if they kick that into, you know, every 5 minutes or something instead of a half an hour.
Yeah, it's weird. It's a good question. I've nitpicked a little bit with the U.S. Geological Survey because the U.S. Geological Survey technically maintains the stream gauges. And so some of their stream gauges at Big Trees notifies every like 15 minutes and other ones. So there are some interesting glitchy things around where we're grabbing the data from. It's an imperfect world of real-time data collection. So we just do the best we can. But
Okay.
that was
Great.
my other safer spot that I wanted to share.
Thank you. Okay. So that's the SAFER website. And we're going to move on. And I want to talk a little bit about the NOAA weather alert radios. Because we know that we're going to be listening to our FM radio stations or AM radio stations who can also provide us a lot of information. You know, shout out to KBCZ and our other local stations that do a great job of keeping us all informed. But what's called a NOAA weather alert radio is a special device. And we're going to tell you a little bit of information about it. And I think we're going to go a little bit faster on this. So let's see, what I want to do is, let's see. Dave, how are you on describing basically what is a NOAA weather alert radio?
Yeah, so I mean, there are a number of vendors. So, you know, my county government caveat, right? We cannot endorse anyone, but you're seeing Midland. They really are the industry leader. They are tapped into the radio towers that the National Weather Service is broadcasting on 24/7, 365 with that wonderfully metallic and mechanical voice that tells you what the weather is doing. But I have that WR400 Deluxe NOAA weather radio. I think that's the one I got.
Oh yeah, this gray one.
And so these weather radios can send an alarm. They can flash a light. They can actually, there's attachments to them that you can purchase through this website that will shake your bed. And so you can program it to do those things for various alerts and warnings. And what we want to do, and so everybody, I'm going to take a second, make sure everybody has a chance to write this down. But we want to test the use of the NOAA weather radio systems to alert folks. And the importance of this is that, as the other person in the audience mentioned, when your communications are down, power is out from PSPS events, a lot of these radios have battery backup. And we can send you messages via these radios. That's called a non-weather emergency message. And so on Wednesday, August 14th at 6:30 p.m., we are going to do a NOAA weather radio test, and you'll get probably too much more, but a fair bit more notification from me and all the other social media and various communication channels about that date as we get closer. But hot off the press, we're going to do a NOAA weather radio test, and we want you guys to either be paying attention to your weather radio at that time or buy one. There are various price points. You can get them at Ace Hardware or Amazon or this website. But we want to test that functionality, because what we recognize is, as that other person mentioned, sometimes you don't have good cell service. Sometimes the power's out. In theory, this tool is one of our best, outside of John and Aries and Ham, is one of our best tools to communicate with you when like all else fails, so to speak. I'll stop there in the interest of time.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So, so these radios, I mean, what makes them different is, I think that they've got this technology they call SAME. Hey, Dan, what does that mean again?
Oh gosh, now you stumped me. I forget. Maybe John knows that messaging, but I forget that terminology and what that means. Actually, I apologize.
Well,
The point of the technology is to issue an alarm only for the specific alerts that you care about. So you set that ahead of time. So if you're in the mountains and you don't care about tsunamis, it won't wake you up when there's a tsunami.
And then I want to give a shout out. Let me see, actually. Our Aries team did a great unboxing video. And so Tammy, Tammy, I know you were going to maybe mention that, but on our website, and I'll put it in the chat, is a link to the unboxing and how to set it up video that the Aries team put together last year or a year or so ago, so that folks can watch that little YouTube video.
Right, and thank you. We're running short of time, and we were considering showing that today. It's really great, but they basically take I think it's actually maybe this WR120 and show how you set it up and configure it. So to help people be comfortable about how to get them to give us the alerts that we want. And then this is the National Weather Service explanation of the SAME weather radios. So when this test happens on August 14, how do you know like what area you're covering? Is that part of what you get to configure in this system? Is you get to choose how widely broadcast this goes out?
So I'm gonna embarrass myself, and John's gonna slap his forehead. But the radio network, the radio towers that distribute are a blanket, right? So there's a couple radio towers that the National Weather Service uses. They can somewhat tailor based on some specific weather radio frequencies that, so we're not going to necessarily blast to the Central Valley, but it's going to be a far and wide. Sonoma County is leading the state in trying to granularize where they can use NOAA weather radio messages and carve up their county, but they're a much bigger county. I
Mhm.
think because we're the second smallest county, I'll probably never be able to granularize it. So I'll be sending the NOAA weather radio test on August 14th to the entire county. Probably I will notify my Santa Clara County partners and Monterey County partners and San Mateo County partners and say, I'm doing this. You may get some bleed over, just an FYI. So I don't have that. It's just everywhere.
And how do you anticipate folks are going to feed back what their experience was?
I think what my intent, just full transparency, is probably to send out a CruiseAware email that this is happening, and a CruiseAware, like a survey link that says, please take this short 3-question, 4-question, short survey. I have a weather radio, or I bought one ahead of this message. I got the message. I didn't get the message. This is the zip code or the community that I live in, just so I get a little bit of spatial information to see how well it worked.
Great.
This is
All
Dan. I
right.
had a question.
Mhm.
We also get these test messages, well, actually, we've also gotten flood-related messages on over the Comcast TV. I was wondering if that's going to happen too this time.
So interesting that you say that, and a little bit of the weeds, but so we have to work with our local media providers. There's one Bay Area media provider, and there's a Salinas-based media provider, and they get the message when it's sent. And for this test on August 14th, in theory, we're going to try not to message radios and televisions, but I can do that. So this NOAA non-weather emergency message system, I can work with the National Weather Service, and I can send a message, and it can go to all radio channels and televisions and do the whole thing if I need to. For this test, my goal is for them to ignore it, and I'll be telling them, or the National Weather Service will be telling them to ignore it and not push it out on TV and radio.
Well, that's something we can also watch out for.
Yep. That'd be great.
Great. Thank you. All right, let's shift gears. And I'd love to talk about the emergency communication flow that we understand can work to benefit us in SLV. We want to know who's involved, how does it work, what's the basic concepts. And I'd like to invite Bob Fike to talk to us about this plan. Welcome, Bob.
Hello, everybody. I'm Bob Fike. I'm a member of SLIVN, the San Lorenzo Valley Emergency Network, as well as certified with CERT, Community Emergency Response Team. And I've been a member of ARES, Amateur Radio Emergency Service, since 1992. We've been doing all kinds of stuff in the San Lorenzo Valley. I'm going to bring up my screen. This was created a while back ago. It was actually began in 2019. I drew this up. I shared this with the district emergency coordinator at the time, Robert Ritchie. He gave it approval on that. He said, you know what, why don't we share this with everybody's CERT, the whole 9 yards, and run it up the flagpole, see if everybody agrees with it. So we met at Roberta's house, AJ6KN. We had 3 CERT leaders, we had 3 ARES leaders, and we all went over the top of this, and it looked really, really good. So that was really good that we actually got it. I look at this. This is like an umbrella of the whole amateur radio, SLIVN, CERT, and ARES network as to how it works. And the number one is everybody here, SLIVN and CERT and ARES, they are all incredibly important for this whole network. And nobody's better than the other one. No one's higher than the other one. We all need each other. And we use this so that we can get information to the EOC, the OR3, and get that information, because we're the eyes and the ears for them in a lot of different places. CERT is absolutely fantastic. They're boots on the ground. Sliven is boots on the ground as well. Aries does their communications thing. So everybody's got their place. I kind of look at this like an operating room or an emergency room, where when a patient comes into the emergency room, the doctor knows where to stand, the nurse knows where to stand, the phlebotomist knows where to stand. Everybody knows their place so that people are tripping over the top of each other. So what this does is this explains where our positions are so that that information can flow freely so that we can get the job done. We do this because we're volunteers. We love our communities, we love our friends, and we love a few of our relatives. And so I want to start out with areas like this. I think everybody can see my cursor. We have in green, we've got CERT and we got Sliven that's here. We have the sheriff's office. We also have Aries. Aries is in the blue. So this is the schematic for that. The important thing is we have, like, for instance, this group right here is the San Lorenzo Valley Emergency Network. They have their MERS radios or whatever communications they decide to do. These other parts right here, these Pico nets, the really small nets, these are the MERS radios for CERT. So these are boots on the ground, the important people, and they report to their fire stations or their fire districts. Thank God that Felton Fire really embraces these people and knows what they can do and what they shouldn't be doing, and it's just absolutely fantastic. Each one of these CERT groups for each one of these fire districts should be reporting to their fire district captain, whoever that might be. And there's a real reason for this. When CERT is engaged, when Sliven is engaged, they need to be reporting to their district fire station, their area where they are. And the reasoning behind that is because there's some traffic, some radio traffic that's going to be coming into that fire station that the fire station itself can handle. It doesn't need to be going to the EOC. We got to be really, really careful that we don't flood the EOC or OR3 with too much information. Otherwise, it's all going to collapse. So we want to make sure that the fire stations or the fire district can handle whatever they want to. They decide as to whether or not it needs to go into OR3 or not. And then that's where Aries kicks in. Aries is long distance. So this is what's so great about this network is the MERS radios is short distance. And that is exactly what they're supposed to do. And that's exactly perfect because that's in these areas here where they're not stepping over the top of each other radio wise. If we have other teams bleeding over on other teams, the communications is going to get really jumbled. So we have separate teams that have different channels and they are short range and they're going to be short range into that fire district. Aries is used for longer distances. So they will be reporting into the OR3, just Aries, when the fire captain or the fire chief decides that that piece of information needs to go to the OR3. As we can see, the EOC also can go out to the world. Let's say, for instance, that we have a major disaster that involves the United States, or even just California. Aries can actually communicate worldwide as well if they need to do that. We do have that put into place, so that's there. We also have the Equine Evac group. Now, if we notice the Equine Evac group, it is reporting directly to the EOC. The reasoning behind that is because we're dealing with animals, not human beings, and not necessarily property, so to speak. We're talking about animals that can't protect themselves. They don't know how to get out of the way. So usually Equine Evac communicates with the EOC directly. Also, it's very common that Aries ham radio operators are in the trucks with the Equine Evac. So that's a whole different setup. We have some Equine Evac people that are ham radio operators and they are training as well. We also have hospitals. If need to, Aries can roll into a hospital if they need to, set up communications, and we can have radio communications for hospitals. You know, so the thing is that with OR3, they have different channels that they can use for communications. Yeah, okay, so cell phones might still be up and running. We might have landlines that are still up and running. We can have all kinds of things going, still operating, but still be able to use Aries and CERT as far as radios are concerned for something that is not major or when those systems go down. So that's really, really important. Also, the thing is that if OR3 has important information that they need to be sending over to each of the fire districts, now it goes a different way, right? The OR3 can say to this fire station here, we need CERT to take a look at this area over here, do some reconnaissance as far as what's going on in that area, and to report on that. So now we can be the eyes and the ears for the OR3 as well in the opposite direction. Then they do their reporting, the CERT does the reporting, they report back to the fire station again. The fire station figures, well, okay, yep, it needs to be going to OR3. Let's send that information to the OR3. That fire station, the ARES person, goes and reports to the OR3. Now, keep in mind, too, that this area right here can be a hot point, because sometimes, depending on how much the disaster is, we have CERT people that are ham radio operators and ARES people at the same time. So they have multiple hats where if they need to, they can do radio communications with CERT, with the ham radio, as well as with ARES. So I think John's going to do some more talking about that as well. There's a much more to this than meets the eye. I'm just covering a really, really broad spectrum of things that we're looking at, the big umbrella, so to speak. If you have any questions or anything like that, please feel free to get a hold of your CERT leader or your SLIVN leader and ask them the questions. They should know this like the back of their hand. And if they don't, we'll talk about it. I think, let me see if I got this, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. Yeah, I'm done.
Thank you so much, Bob. This is fantastic. So on that, actually, I would love to jump to talk about MERS, and particularly the interest in MERS in the neighborhoods. So we've invited Lisa Shalop from the Bonnie Doon area to show us some of the planning that went into how Bonnie Doon's moved forward with MERS radio in the neighborhoods. So welcome, Lisa.
Hi, everybody. My name's Lisa. Boy, you guys are really hanging in there. It's getting late, but I'm going to try to go as fast as I can and answer any of your questions at the end, but I do have a few slides here. My name's Lisa. There's my email. If you want to talk further, definitely reach out to me. It's just my last name at me.com. But I'll tell you a little bit about what we did up here in Bonnie Doon. So, why did we need radios? I think you guys all know about that. Power outages, internet outages, things are always getting better, but just when they're working, they're not working again. So, with things like working from home and things like fires, we decided that radios would be a good solution to our communications problem. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about how it worked into some of our FireWise action plans. So, we were a little bit overwhelmed by everything and really what to do about it. But we had the fortunate situation of having a really great community organizer, ham radio operator named Dawn Mackey, who just started talking about radios. And, she brought her CERT expertise to the table. She brought her ham radio expertise to the table. She started getting involved with FireWise and just really started talking to people. And there was a great response. So we formed this group called Bonnie Doon Neighborhood Communications. And we started getting organized. Doesn't really matter how you get organized. It could be by geography. It could be your FireWise neighborhood. It could be your map your neighborhood that you might be familiar with through CERT. But the important thing was just to get into groups. You needed an organizer of each group. You needed the people in the group to get radios. And then each group ideally had a ham operator, but I'm going to tell you in a little while what we did when we didn't have ham radio operators for some groups, because we were able to work around it. We had a lot of complications in Bonnie Doon with the terrain, because it's not flat here and all the hills, but we had, miraculously, we just found this really great mapping radio person that was able to help us map out the different neighborhoods and assign the different radio channels. So the way it works is you have neighborhoods like the Bird Streets that are organized. They might have 35 different homes in there with radios. My neighborhood is small. We only have 8. Country Estates is another big neighborhood. But the point is that you talk within your neighborhood. Your organizers talk between the neighborhoods, maybe using ham radios, or maybe you can even just talk to your neighboring neighborhoods using MERS radios. And then the ham radios reach out to talk to other ham radios, either in town or further away, either at the county EOC or, around the world if you really needed to. So this is kind of like a little bit more details of one of the nodes of the drawings that you just saw with Bob, but it's the same concept. Groups, talk to the EOC, and then talk to the world. Could have the possibility to talk out to the world from there. So how did we decide which radios to use? Well, it was a little bit of alphabet soup. We picked MERS. It's called Multi-Use Radio Service for a couple of main reasons. They were reasonably priced. They were the same ones that CERT was using, so we could use their very well thought out by some of the people that are here at this meeting, very well thought out different channels for different neighborhoods to use, and for the range. So, and they're not licensed, so anybody could use them. That's, those are the main reasons why we picked the MERS radios. So a couple of things, if you're thinking about doing this, it's really important to have a standard. Otherwise, you'll just be troubleshooting, into the next, for days. But if you have a standard, you have standard configurations, you have standard ways to program it, you're just going to really, really simplify everything. So these radios, you can buy them from the manufacturer, you can buy them on Amazon. They're programmed with, can be programmed with software. We have, different people that, we have little programming parties where everyone brings their radios and we program. And they're also programmed the same as the CERT radios. So in an emergency where CERT was activated, you could hear them. One other neat thing about the new MERS V2. So when we started, we were using the version 1, but now they've been upgraded to the version 2. And the version 2, you can, they're customizable to listen to police and fire. So again, once you're talking to your neighbors, and then you're talking to your neighboring neighborhoods, and then your ham radio operators are talking to the EOC or other ham radio operators. You can also listen only to police and fire, just like you could on a scanner. So for that, more for that situational awareness. So one really important thing about these radios is practice. They have to be charged. You have to know how to use them. So we had a lot of fun with it. I mean, first of all, my husband and I, we use it all the time on our property. Then I got my neighbors. Every time the power goes out, we all check in. We can talk to neighboring neighborhoods, even just with MERS. We can change the channel and talk to some of the neighbors, or with our ham radios. We can also talk. So the last power outage that we had, I'll just tell you a quick story how this really works because of all of our practice. So the power went out, everybody checked in, including, one of the neighboring neighborhoods. And about an hour later, I hear my friend Jeannie calling out, Lisa, are you there? Lisa, are you there? Sure enough, there was a car accident in front of her house. She didn't have power. She couldn't call 911. So she called me. I was able to call on my ham radio over to another neighboring neighborhood, and that person had power, and they were able to call directly into CAL FIRE and get the appropriate response. They were able to update. We were able to give them updates about the situation. And, you know, sure enough, 10, 15 minutes later, we hear the sirens. Here comes CAL FIRE to investigate the accident. So, you know, that's just an example. We never would have been able to do that if we hadn't practiced, but it really works. It really does. It really does work. So some of the challenges that we've had, there are some of the things that we've learned, not only challenges, is that it really brings the community together. I mean, just knowing your neighbors and knowing that they're there for you was really very useful. We had fun with the exercise. Some of them were, you know, go out and find something in the neighborhood, or some of them were just, you know, check in and, you know, try to learn something about one of your other neighbors, or all kinds of fun little games you can make up. You do have to take care to avoid interference between the neighborhoods and assign different channels. It's another one of the advantages to these radios, is that it has multiple channels. And we were, like I said, really lucky up here because we had this radio expert who helped us map out all the channels. And if you go to our website, BonningDoonRadio.org, you can see the maps that we have that show the different neighborhoods. You can even see a flyover that shows all the different neighborhoods. Again, we found some amazing people that were able to help us lay this all out. It is a little bit hard to keep the interest. I mean, we have 20 neighborhoods with over 200 people with radios, and after a while, I think sometimes people get a little bit bored with it. We need a good disaster to kind of get their attention back, but hopefully that doesn't happen. Anyway, for the larger groups, it's better if the organizer is not also the ham radio operator, just because that's a lot to do. In my small neighborhood, it's fine. I can be the ham radio operator for my neighborhood and other neighborhoods if their ham radio operators aren't available. So some of the resources, check out BonningDoonRadio.info. There's Firewise events where Don Mackey gives a presentation that you can get more information. The CERT Auxiliary has more information. The Amateur Radio, Emergency Communications, xczcom.com has more organizations. Our website, the Bonnie Doon Radio Info, has a lot of info on what radio to purchase and links and all those kind of things. If you're interested in becoming a ham radio operator, we have a class coming up. Bob, who just spoke before me, is going to be teaching. It's free. It starts on September 24th. It's in person. It's the first one we've done in person in quite a while. So there's a lot to be gained by being there in person. Here's more info on it. And I can send you all my slides also. But if you're interested in becoming a ham radio operator, I would highly recommend it. I got my license right after I moved up to Bonnie Doon. And I think I was one of the first ones to report the Warnella fire when it started that night. And I was really glad that I had gotten that license, because that was exactly the reason that I got it. Okay, that was a whirlwind, I know, sorry, but I wanted to try to catch us up on time. Does anybody have any questions?
Well, first of all, that's really well done, and thank you so much, Lisa. And the on that flyer was I believe a QR code that leads to a sign up link.
Yes.
For people to sign up for this class. So thanks for sharing that. Okay, Then let's move on because our next guest is going to tell us more about ham radio and Aries, and that would be John Gerhardt.
Oh, thanks, Tammy. You've heard a lot about ham radio, and I thought I'd just talk just a little bit about some of the details. The claim we make is that we're reliable. Ham radio communications work almost no matter what. And I'm, if I can get my slides to advance, I'm curious. Let me explain why that is. What makes this so robust? The ham radio equipment isn't that different. This is the MERS radio that we've been talking about. There's a number that kind of look like this. They cost about $70. They have about 5 watts of power. You don't need a license. There are very few adjustments. The range is maybe a mile or 3, depending on conditions. Ham radio looks about the same, costs more, has the same power. You need a license. It's got tons and tons of adjustments, and this thing will work county-wide. And why is that exactly? Well, the secret is a combination of dedicated volunteers who spend a lot of time training and have the right equipment. We have over 50 active Aries members in the county. We practice every week. There's radio practices. This map here shows the hams who happen to participate in a recent weekly net. This is a map of the county, but it's kind of turned sideways. So here's SoCal, where I live. Here's Lompico. Here's Boulder Creek. Every little red dot here is an Aries member who signed on to this particular weekly event. We typically get 20 to 25 members checking in every week. And this training exercise in part simulates emergency activity. The benefit of having members spread all over the county like this is that if something bad happens, we're pre-deployed. There's probably somebody who's close to where communication is needed. And it's when the cell phones and the internet and everything stop working that we're most useful. So I talked about training. This is just one tiny example. We use a phonetic alphabet to communicate. This is done by voice. Things can be confusing. Is it Hill Street? Is it Mill Street? There's a standard way of making sure your message is understood, and this is among the things that we practice. We also support community events, large outdoor events. This is a community service. It's kind of fun, but it's good practice. This shows a setup we had at the Sea Otter bicycle event earlier this year. Happens to be out in the former Fort Ord backcountry where there's no cell service, and there were hundreds of eager cyclists zooming around, and some of them had problems and needed medical assistance. So by putting hams around out in the backcountry, we're able to make sure that the event organizers understood what was happening, and people got help if they needed it. And the reason this is good practice for emergencies is that these events, no matter how well organized, they never go as planned. They're usually annual events, and the people organizing them are volunteers. And it's been a year since the last event, and they kind of forgot some of the things. And so it's very common. There'll be a plan. We'll show up at the appointed time, and things will be different. Well, that's great practice for an emergency, and we have a lot of participation in events like this. So why do our little radios work so well around the county? One of the secrets is amateur radio repeater stations. Repeaters make our little radios powerful. The repeater lives high up on a mountain somewhere. There's a good one up in Upper De La Viega Park, for example. And the little radio just needs a good path up to the high tower, wherever that is. And then the signal can be repeated down to another radio. And that's something that's, these repeaters are owned by individual amateurs or by radio clubs. They're designed to work without any other commercial infrastructure. Of course, they need power, but they have significant backup batteries to operate on their own, and they're pretty robust. So that allows us to do a lot. An individual amateur then might just have one little radio, but can still communicate all around the county. We've got some valuable real estate in the Emergency Operations Center. They've given us a very nice room. We've filled it with radio equipment. Our group officially is called Auxiliary Communications, or Auxcom. And there's this picture shows operators during a training exercise we had. We can monitor multiple radio channels at the same time. And for this exercise, we had 2 pairs of operators, one running the radios and one logging and keeping track of what's going on. And this is exactly the kind of activity that we would anticipate needing during an actual emergency. And we like practicing this stuff because it's kind of fun. It makes us feel useful, and we actually are useful when things get rough. The equipment in here is funded by grants, some of it from the California Office of Emergency Services, some of it from Santa Cruz Communication Support, which is a little 501c3 nonprofit we formed so that we can give people tax deductions if they want to help us with equipment. And it's a lot of fun. You can join the fun to better serve your community if you want to. You don't have to be a brainiac to do this. There's just some rules you have to learn. And Bob, whom you heard earlier, is eager to explain it. His class starts the 24th of September in Live Oak, and it's free. You can afford it. I'm happy to answer questions if there are any. Back to you, Tammy.
Oh, great. Thank you. Actually, I have a question, which is, what are the repeaters that help communication happen in San Lorenzo Valley? Like, how many are there? Where are they?
There are several. There's an excellent one on Ben Lomond Mountain, which has good coverage through the San Lorenzo Valley. There's a repeater in Bonnie Doon, which covers part of the valley and covers Bonnie Doon. There are some repeaters higher up on the mountain that have good coverage into Boulder Creek. And actually, their coverage extends down to SoCal, where I happen to live. So there are a lot of these. One of the things, some of us ham radio operators just kind of get into the equipment stuff, and some people just like putting this stuff together and setting it up and making it available to the amateur radio community. So there are a lot of us around, and if some of these repeaters fail because of an earthquake or who knows what, others won't. And even if they all fail, we know how to communicate without any repeaters because we practice that about every week.
Yeah, regarding practice, and can you explain real quick, like, what's a net? How does a net come to be?
Oh, great. Into our jargon. We love jargon. A net, short for network, it's just a bunch of hams who agree to meet at a certain radio frequency at a certain time and talk to each other. So we have these nets. Typically, we do a roll call. We establish who's on the net, and then we have some kind of training exercise, which might involve going to different frequencies or passing messages, or sometimes we have stupid games, but they involve being able to communicate.
Right. So anybody could be joining a given net and they're at these different places. What are the kinds of real world things happen when people are trying to communicate over long distances? What do you guys learn?
I mentioned that our little radios are very flexible. There are dozens and dozens of different adjustments to be made. They can be set up in different ways to handle different circumstances. We generally practice setting up antennas. Antennas are very important, and a good antenna will solve a communication problem very often. And by playing around with this stuff, becoming familiar with it, then we have a variety of tools that we can use when circumstances require it. So it really comes down to the people and practice and trying things and recognizing how you can get help technically from other members in the group, and trying things that you think might work and adjusting them until they do.
That's fantastic. Is there information about any local meetings or groups that might be happening in addition to these weekly nets?
Yeah, the weekly nets are radio events, and you can listen to them, but you need a particular radio that can tune into ham frequencies. There are a couple of excellent radio clubs in the area. Santa Cruz County Amateur Radio Club, and there's the San Lorenzo Valley Amateur Radio Club. Folks in these clubs are interested in public service, but they're also interested in dozens of other aspects of ham radio, which involve contacting foreign countries or bouncing signals off satellites or learning Morse code or other things that I haven't talked about, because they're generally not relevant to the public service communication that ARES focuses on.
I guess my last question is, what do you possibly see as the future of ham radio in SLV and Santa Cruz County?
Well, as you mentioned, our county's been cursed with a large number of disasters in recent years, and we fear there may be more. And so we're hoping that more people become interested in learning how to use the tools that are available to facilitate communications in emergencies. We're exploring high bandwidth amateur radio connections that would allow high-speed internet outside of normal commercial infrastructure. There's possibilities like that. And if anyone's particularly interested in those details, I would love it if they joined our group. We need a few dedicated people who want to focus on future possibilities like that.
Awesome, thank you. And we are wrapping up this meeting. Dave, I'd love to see if you've got any closing remarks you'd like to give.
No, just appreciate everybody's time. I think communication, as everybody has said tonight, is a critical part of how we all keep each other safe and informed. As John alluded to, the thing that always is important for me to remind folks of is the last time we had an earthquake, cell phones were like this big, right? And so we've become dependent on these things, and they will likely go down in an earthquake. And John and his team and the MERS radios that Lisa talked about will be, for a series of days, perhaps, our primary mode of communication to community. So it goes without saying that's something that I think about, and I appreciate John and the whole ARES team and Lisa and all the community work that people are doing to build those redundancies to communication. Because there's no one single thing that's going to work in all environments all the time.
Great, thank you so much. And with that, I'll just want to repeat that we will be having another SLIVN meeting next Tuesday, and we're going to talk about changes that are coming for broadband internet, making access more equitable and more affordable, hopefully, for people throughout the county. And of course, we're interested in how we might benefit in San Lorenzo Valley. So we'll be hearing about the state and federal initiatives that are leading, and also finding out about what's actually happening with initiatives being driven from the county also to help ensure that we get some fantastic infrastructure changes. I don't know all what they are. I look forward to learning about it, but there could be fiber being put in the ground up along Empire Grade. Could be some other new technologies, what they call middle mile and last mile infrastructure changes. So there's a lot to learn about, and we'll have a very interesting meeting next week, Tuesday, the same time. Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you all soon. Thanks again so much to our guests.
Take care, everybody.
All right. Good night, everybody. Thank you.